California is burning. Yeah, it's hard to, escape the news right now, these wildfires. Tragically, they've already taken 24 lives.
It's terrible.
And Wells Fargo, they're predicting that the insured losses could reach like $30 billion. It's
Yeah.
just, I mean,
It's mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling, yeah, but it's not just about the numbers, right? I mean, it's about, I read this quote in MarketWatch from a business owner in Malibu, and it just kind of hit me. They said, how can you fit your life in a car?
Wow.
And, it's just a powerful uh, image that really captures, I think, the scale of this disaster.
Yeah. I mean, it really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? It highlights the fact that behind these massive financial figures, there are real people whose lives are being completely upended.
Absolutely.
And today, we're going to sort of dive into a pool of financial news and analysis, but with that human impact in mind. We'll explore how business and tech are intersecting with events like these wildfires. And hopefully help you understand not just what's happening, but why it matters to you, even if you're not in California or directly involved in these industries.
Right.
Does that sound good?
Exactly. So let's kind of unpack this whole wildfire situation a little bit further. CNBC, they're reporting that firefighters are actually bracing for even stronger winds, which, could mean even more devastation.
Yeah, that's really worrying.
And then there's the whole political dimension to this. Governor Newsom, he's been pretty vocal about criticizing the federal government's response.
Right. Well, and that raises a really interesting point about responsibility during these kinds of crises. I
Yeah.
mean, who's accountable when something like this happens? We have Edison International, the parent company of Southern California Edison. They're saying that they haven't found any electrical issues before one of the major fires broke out. But then at the same time, there's a lawsuit against the LA utility alleging that water shortages actually hampered efforts to fight another fire.
So it's a lot more complicated. Yeah. It's not just a simple blame game,
Right, exactly.
It's about understanding the complex interplay of factors that contribute to these disasters.
For sure.
And speaking of complex, let's shift gears a bit to the broader economic landscape, which, I don't know about you, but it feels pretty shaky right now.
Definitely.
MarketWatch has this piece on the 10-year Treasury yield approaching 5%. And, from what I gathered, stock market investors are getting spooked because this could be a sign that the economy might be slowing down.
Yeah, you're right on the money there. And it actually connects to a prediction from Bank of America that we pulled from CNBC.
Okay.
They're saying we shouldn't expect any interest rate cuts by the Fed until 2025. So if borrowing stays expensive, it's going to put a squeeze on businesses, making it harder for them to grow and potentially impacting stock prices.
So that's like the big picture stuff, right? But how does all of this economic uncertainty trickle down to everyday people like you and me?
Right.
We found these two articles in MarketWatch, and I found them really, really fascinating. One is about a 66-year-old who just inherited $500,000.
Oh, wow.
And she's trying to figure out how to invest it wisely in this environment.
Smart.
Right. And then the other one's about a 51-year-old. He makes $300,000 a year.
Okay.
But he's considering leaving his job to spend more time with his wife.
Wow.
And I love these stories because they put a human face on, these economic trends. Right?
Totally. You have one person trying to play it safe and another who's prioritizing life over money.
Exactly.
It makes you think about your own priorities. How much risk are you willing to take, both financially and personally?
It's a tough call, but I guess even in times of, uncertainty, some people remain optimistic. CNBC quotes BlackRock's Rick Ryder saying he'd 100% buy the NASDAQ dip. I mean, should we all be running out to buy stocks right now?
Well, I wouldn't say it's quite that simple. I think what Ryder's highlighting is that even in a volatile market, there are always opportunities.
Right.
But it's crucial to be selective. You need a solid investment strategy. Jumping in head first without, understanding the risks is never a good idea. You can't just assume everything's going to bounce back like it always has in the past.
I see your point. Things do feel a little different this time around.
Yeah.
And speaking of uncertainty and things feeling different, let's move over to the tech world, which seems to be, constantly in flux these days.
Always.
We have this MarketWatch article about the potential TikTok ban, and it's looming large. It seems like things are getting pretty serious with the Supreme Court now involved.
This is a big one, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Supreme Court could potentially uphold a national security law that would essentially shut down TikTok in the U.S. Imagine the impact on millions of users who rely on TikTok for, entertainment, news, even their livelihoods.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about. And to add, another layer of intrigue to this whole saga, there's a report from Bloomberg that China might consider selling TikTok's U.S. operations to Elon Musk.
Now, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
That would be a game changer.
Yeah. It would put Musk, who, already has his hands full with Tesla, SpaceX, and Twitter, right in the middle of this geopolitical tug of war.
Right.
Be fascinating to see how he'd navigate, the regulatory hurdles and the scrutiny from both the U.S. and Chinese governments.
Yeah. It makes my head spin just thinking about it.
Yeah, mine too.
But while we wait to see how that drama unfolds, we have another tech giant, Meta, already making moves in anticipation of this potential TikTok-shaped void. CNBC reports that Instagram head Adam Mosseri is talking about prioritizing original content on their platform.
It just goes to show you, how fierce the competition is in the social media world. These companies are constantly adapting and strategizing to stay ahead of the curve.
It's crazy.
And speaking of strategies, the White House just announced new restrictions on AI chip exports, and MarketWatch is calling it a potential turning point for the industry.
Okay, so break this down for me. What exactly are these restrictions and, why should we care?
So basically, the U.S. government is trying to limit the flow of advanced AI technology to certain countries,
Okay.
citing national security concerns. And this has a direct impact on companies like NVIDIA. They're a major player in the AI chip market. CNBC reports that their stock took a hit following the announcement.
I see. So it's not just about tech then, it's also about, geopolitics and the balance of power in the world.
Exactly. And it raises some interesting questions about the long-term consequences of these restrictions.
Right.
Like, will this accelerate other countries' development of their own AI technology, making them less reliant on the U.S.?
Mm-hmm.
Or will it hinder global progress in the field by stifling collaboration and the free exchange of ideas?
Those are great questions. Lots to ponder there. And speaking of pondering, I came across this article from The Motley Fool that asks a pretty provocative question. Has NVIDIA stock, which has risen an astounding 2,081%, finally peaked?
Oh, that is a good question.
Right.
I think it's a valid question to ask. Investing in technology always comes with risks, especially during times of, geopolitical uncertainty. We saw this play out recently when Mark Zuckerberg made some cautious remarks about the timeline for quantum computing development, leading to a sell-off of quantum computing stocks. Even the tech giants are urging, a dose of realism when it comes to emerging technologies.
So it's like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Big gains, sudden drops, and no way to predict what's coming next.
That's a great analogy. But even amidst that volatility, innovation marches on. CNBC reported that Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella created a new AI group within the company, signaling their commitment to pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So it seems like this race for AI dominance is really, really heating up.
Yeah.
But I found this quote from OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, also featured in a CNBC article, really thought-provoking. He said that the ability to ask great questions is more valuable than knowing all the answers. What do you make of that?
I think he's spot on. In the age of AI, where information is readily available, it's our ability to think critically, to question assumptions, and to frame problems in new ways that will really set us apart.
Yeah. It's not just about the tech itself. It's about how we use it and what we choose to do with it.
Exactly. And speaking of choices, let's take a quick look at a few other notable events before we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. I'm ready for a whirlwind tour of corporate maneuvers and market happenings. What do we have on the docket?
Okay, well, first up, we have IAC, the media and internet conglomerate. They're spinning off Angie, their home improvement platform.
Right. I remember seeing that in MarketWatch and CNBC. What's the strategy behind that move?
Well, it seems like IAC has a history of kind of nurturing businesses and then setting them free to chart their own course once they've reached a certain level of maturity. Think about companies like, Match Group, Vimeo, and Expedia. They were all once part of IAC.
So they're like the venture capital arm of the corporate world, constantly incubating new ventures.
Exactly.
Interesting. What else do we have?
Well, there's the news about the SEC charging Robinhood with securities violations. CNBC reports that the popular brokerage platform will be paying a $45 million penalty.
Ouch. It seems like Robinhood can't stay out of the headlines. but not always for the right reasons. What is the story there?
Yeah, well, I think this particular case highlights the challenges of balancing innovation with regulatory compliance.
Right.
Robinhood's mission is to democratize finance and make investing accessible to everyone, but they've also faced criticism, for their gamified approach to investing and concerns about whether they're adequately protecting their users.
Oh, yeah. It's a tough balancing act for sure.
It is.
And speaking of tough, we can't forget about the drama unfolding in the steel industry. Remember we talked about the CEO of Cleveland Cliffs, still eyeing a potential acquisition of U.S. Steel.
Ah, yes.
His initial bid was rejected, but CNBC reports that he's not giving up.
Really?
He's even taking aim at Japan, accusing them of dumping cheap steel into the U.S. market and harming American jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds like a high-stakes poker game. A lot of bluster and bravado.
It is.
I'm curious to see how that one plays out. Anything else catching your eye?
Well, we have Moderna lowering their 2025 sales forecast, which led to a significant drop in their stock price.
Oh, wow.
It's a reminder that even in, high growth sectors like biotech, things can change quickly and expectations need to be adjusted.
That makes sense. What about those personal finance stories that we were discussing earlier? Any updates on the 66-year-old inheritor and the 51-year-old considering leaving his job?
We haven't heard back from them directly, but their stories really got me thinking about the bigger picture. We're living in a time of immense uncertainty, and it's impacting everyone's financial decisions.
Absolutely.
Like, how do we make sure our money lasts? How do we balance our financial goals with our personal values? It's a lot to consider.
It is. And I think those stories really resonated with a lot of people who are trying to navigate this uncertain landscape. It's not just about the numbers. It's about, our hopes and our fears and our dreams for the future.
Absolutely.
Speaking of the future, let's pause here and pick up our deep dive in the next segment.
Sounds good to me. I'm particularly interested in digging deeper into the potential long-term implications of those AI chip restrictions and exploring how they might reshape the global tech landscape.
Great. We'll be back right after this. Stay tuned.
So, before the break, we were talking about those White House restrictions on AI chip exports.
Right. And I can say I'm still a little fuzzy on why this matters to the average person.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us aren't, building robots or anything like that. So why should we care about AI chips?
Well, think of it this way. AI is like rapidly becoming integrated into almost every aspect of our lives. From the recommendations you get on your streaming services to the algorithms that power financial markets, AI is working behind the scenes, shaping our experiences in ways that we might not even realize.
So these restrictions are basically putting a damper on the development of AI.
Yeah, to some extent.
But couldn't that be a good thing? I mean, some people are pretty worried about AI, becoming too powerful.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. I mean, on the one hand, slowing down the pace of AI development could give us more time to address those ethical and societal implications of this technology. But on the other hand, it could also hinder progress in areas like healthcare, climate change research, other fields where AI has the potential to, make a positive impact.
So it's a delicate balancing act. And these restrictions also have geopolitical implications, right? I mean, if the U.S. is holding back on AI technology, won't that just create an opportunity for other countries to take the lead?
It's a real concern. I mean, imagine someone trying to plug a volcano with a cork.
Right.
That's what these restrictions feel like to me, trying to hold back a force that's too powerful to contain. In the long run, it might be more effective to focus on, fostering international collaboration, establishing ethical guidelines for AI development, rather than trying to control the flow of technology, which is almost impossible in today's world. We're so interconnected now.
Yeah, it's a complex issue, that's for sure. Okay, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about another cutting-edge technology that seems to be, generating a lot of buzz. Quantum computing. Earlier we mentioned that Mark Zuckerberg, expressed some caution about the timeline for its widespread adoption. What did you make of his comments?
I think Zuckerberg was right to inject a dose of realism into the hype surrounding quantum computing. It's a field with enormous potential, but it's still in its very early stages of development.
Right.
It's like the Wild West of technology right now. Lots of potential, but also a lot of unknowns.
So we shouldn't expect to see quantum computers, on our desks anytime soon.
Not quite. There are still significant technical hurdles to overcome before quantum computers become, practical for everyday use. We're talking about, building stable and reliable quantum systems, developing efficient quantum algorithms, figuring out how to scale up production.
Right.
It's a long-term game.
So should we just ignore quantum computing for now then and focus on more, immediate technological advancements?
Not necessarily. I mean, while it's important to be, realistic about the timeline, the potential benefits of quantum computing are so vast that it's definitely worth pursuing.
Yeah.
We're talking about the ability to, to solve problems that are currently impossible for even the most powerful classical computers.
Right.
Think about, drug discovery, material science, financial modeling, cryptography. Quantum computing could revolutionize those fields and many others.
It's mind-boggling to think about what might be possible once this technology matures.
Absolutely.
But if Zuckerberg is urging patience, does that mean other tech giants are taking a more cautious approach as well?
Not at all. Companies like Microsoft, Google, IBM, and Amazon, they're all, investing heavily in quantum computing research and development. They see it as a strategic priority, and they're racing to see, who can crack the quantum code first.
So it's a bit of a paradox then, right? I mean, we have this, groundbreaking technology with the potential to change the world, but it's still years, if not decades, away from becoming mainstream.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we have other tech developments like the potential TikTok ban and the rise of AI that are, demanding our attention right now. It's a lot to keep up with.
It certainly is. And it highlights the fact that we're living in a time of, unprecedented technological change. The pace of innovation is accelerating, and it's shaping our lives in profound ways.
Okay, let's take a step back from the world of, cutting edge tech for a moment and revisit some of the other stories we touched on earlier. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on IEC spinning off Angie, their home improvement platform. It seems like they have a history of doing this with other successful businesses like Match Group and Vimeo. What's the rationale behind this strategy?
Well, it's an interesting approach. By spinning off their businesses, IAC can create, more focused and agile companies that are better positioned to compete in their respective markets. It's like giving their offspring the freedom to spread their wings and fly on their own.
And it seems to be working for them. I guess sometimes, letting go can be the best way to foster growth and innovation.
Right.
Speaking of innovation, we also discussed the SEC charging Robinhood with securities violations.
Mm.
It seems like they're constantly walking this tightrope between, disrupting the financial industry and staying on the right side of the law.
Well, their mission to democratize finance, it is commendable, but, they also have a responsibility to operate within that regulatory framework and to protect their users.
Mm.
This case serves as a reminder that, even the most well-intentioned companies can make missteps, and that regulatory oversight is essential to ensure fairness and transparency in the financial markets.
It's a delicate balance for sure. And speaking of delicate balances, we can't forget about the drama unfolding in the steel industry. We discussed the CEO of Cleveland-Cliffs and his persistent pursuit of U.S. steel. And, he's also been quite vocal in his criticism of Japan's role in the global steel market. What's your take on this situation?
Well, it's a classic example of corporate maneuvering and the interplay of business and geopolitics. The CEO of Cleveland-Cliffs, he sees an opportunity to consolidate the steel industry and create a more dominant player.
Yeah.
But he's facing resistance from U.S. Steel, and his comments about Japan suggest that he's willing to use nationalist rhetoric to advance his agenda.
It's a high stakes game with a lot of moving pieces. It's a reminder that business isn't always just about the bottom line. There are also, political and nationalistic factors at play, and those can be just as influential as financial considerations.
Mm.
And speaking of factors that can influence markets, we also touched on Moderna lowering its 2025 sales forecast, which, led to a drop in their stock price. It's a reminder that even in industries that experience, periods of rapid growth, there can be adjustments and setbacks.
For sure.
Right. I mean, in Moderna's case, the demand for COVID-19 vaccines is naturally declining as the pandemic wanes. So
Yeah.
they're having to adapt and focus on developing new products and finding new markets.
Right, exactly. And it highlights the fact that investing in any industry always carries, a certain degree of risk. You can't just assume that past performance will continue indefinitely.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to the personal finance stories we discussed earlier.
Hmm.
The 66-year-old inheritor trying to, make her money last, and the 51-year-old debating leaving his high-paying job to spend more time with his wife. Their stories, really resonated with me, and I'm sure they did with many of our, listeners as well. What are your thoughts on those stories and their relevance to our discussion today?
I think those stories, personalize the economic anxieties and opportunities that we've been discussing.
Hmm.
They, remind us that behind the abstract numbers and market trends, there are real people grappling with difficult financial decisions.
Hmm.
The 66-year-old is facing the challenge of, preserving her wealth in an uncertain economic climate, while the 51-year-old is weighing the value of time and personal fulfillment against financial security.
It's a powerful reminder that money isn't everything. It's a means to an end, and ultimately, we each have to decide what's most important to us and make choices that align with our values and priorities.
Well said. And their stories also highlight the importance of having a solid financial plan, regardless of your age or income level. In times of uncertainty, it's more important than ever to be, proactive about managing your finances and preparing for the unexpected.
Absolutely. It's about, taking control of your financial future, whatever that may look like for you.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this segment, from the implications of AI chip restrictions to the future of quantum computing, the drama unfolding in the steel industry, and the personal financial dilemmas that many people are facing.
And we've seen how all these seemingly disparate stories are interconnected, reflecting the complex and rapidly changing world we live in. Let's take another quick break and come back for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll, explore some additional news stories and leave you with some final thoughts to ponder. Stay with us. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've, covered a lot of ground already, from those wildfires and economic jitters to AI power plays and, personal financial dilemmas.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. And through it all, we've seen how seemingly unrelated events can actually be, interconnected, reflecting the complexities of, our globalized world.
Right. It's like, you pull on one thread
Mhm.
and you realize it's connected to this whole like tapestry of events and trends.
And in fact,
Before we wrap things up, there are a few more news items that I want to touch on. First up, we have Eli Lilly, the pharmaceutical giant. They're making headlines with their new weight loss drug.
oh yeah, their CEO is predicting it'll be approved next year.
Hmm.
And CNBC reports that this has, sent ripples of excitement through the healthcare industry.
Yeah, I can see why. Weight loss is a huge market, and
Yeah,
and a new drug could be a game changer for millions of people.
absolutely.
But let's not forget that new drugs often come with risks and side effects.
Right.
So it's important to approach this with cautious optimism.
Absolutely. Thorough testing and careful consideration of, potential risks are crucial. Speaking of risks, we also have news from the biotech world with, Moderna lowering its 2025 sales forecast.
Right.
This caused their stock to take a pretty significant plunge, according to CNBC.
It seems like the roller coaster ride of biotech investing continues.
Yeah.
What's behind this adjustment in Moderna's outlook?
Well, as we discussed earlier, the demand for those COVID-19 vaccines is declining as the, the pandemic recedes.
Right.
Moderna had a huge surge in revenue during the height of the pandemic, but they're now having to adjust their expectations and focus on developing new products and, finding new markets.
It's a reminder that even companies in seemingly booming sectors can, face unexpected challenges and have to adapt quickly.
Yeah, that's the nature of the game these days.
And on a completely different note, we have news from the world of meme stocks. Intracellular Therapies Inc., or ITCI, seeing a sudden surge in its stock price.
Oh, really?
A Raging Bull is reporting on this, and it seems like the frenzy surrounding meme stocks hasn't completely died down.
Wow.
It's a reminder that the stock market can be, driven by speculation and social media hype just as much as by fundamentals.
Absolutely. It's a fascinating phenomenon, and it really highlights the power of those online communities and the unpredictable nature of, market sentiment.
Okay. One last piece of news before we move on to our final thoughts. President Biden has just announced the forgiveness of student debt for another 150,000 borrowers, according to CNBC. This continues his administration's efforts to, provide relief to those struggling with student loan debt.
That's a policy that sparked a lot of debate. Supporters argue that it provides much needed relief to, those burdened with debt, while critics argue that it's unfair to those who've already paid off their loans or chose not to, go to college.
It's a complex issue with, no easy answers. It reflects the broader debate about, the rising cost of education and the challenges facing young people today.
Right. And it's a topic that, deserves further exploration and discussion. But, for now, let's shift our focus to some final reflections on everything we've covered in this deep dive.
Yeah. I'm ready to kind of tie it all together. What are your key takeaways from this whirlwind tour of, current events?
Well, I think the overarching theme that's emerged is uncertainty. We're living in a time of profound change and unpredictability, and it's impacting, every aspect of our lives, from the economy and the political landscape to the rapid advancements in technology and the personal financial decisions we make.
I completely agree. We've seen this uncertainty play out in the stock market, in the tech industry, in global events, and even in the stories of those individuals grappling with their financial futures.
Right. And in the face of this uncertainty, I think it's more important than ever to be, informed, to be adaptable, and to be, proactive in shaping our own destinies.
Well said. We can't control everything that happens in the world, but we can control how we respond to it.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the final thought we want to leave you with. Remember those AI chip export restrictions we discussed earlier?
Right. The ones that felt like trying to plug a volcano with a cork.
Precisely. That decision, it highlights the tension between trying to, control the flow of technology and the inevitability of innovation.
Yeah.
And it raises a crucial question. Will this move ultimately accelerate other countries' development of, their own AI technology, leading to a more multipolar world? Or will it, hinder global progress in the field by stifling collaboration and the free exchange of ideas?
It's a question with no easy answers, but it's one that we all need to be thinking about as we navigate this rapidly evolving technological landscape. We encourage you to share your thoughts on this question or any other topic that resonated with you during our deep dive. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Thank you.